Hello, everyone. My name is always Asmal. Welcome to another episode of Tooways to Skin a Cat, a show where we talk career experiences, entrepreneurship, and investments. The main aim is to show that there's more than one way to be successful other than just climbing the corporate ladder. Now, we are live on LinkedIn and YouTube, and the show will be available on podcast by tomorrow. For those listening on Apple Podcast or on Spotify, please leave us a rating. Now, if you're joining us live, drop a one in the comments so that we know we're not talking to ourselves, and drop a two in the comments if you're watching the recording. My guest for this week is someone who's actually climbed the corporate ladder. Her name is Shenika Ramsoonder. She's a chartered accountant who moved, uh, obviously did the articles, then moved from financial manager to head of finance to CFO for a large organization in one organization. Her experience covers Johannesburg and Durban. Shenika, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Tooways, for having me.
Let's jump straight in. Tell us your story. Where do you come from? And maybe even outside of work. Who is Shenika Ramsoonder? Give us that backstory.
Okay. Well, firstly, thank you for having me on the podcast. And a bit about Shenika Ramsoonder. Tooways, I'm a Durban-born girl, born in Durban, KZN. I grew up in an Indian settlement called Phoenix. So back in the day, during the apartheid times, um, people of color were obviously banished to certain areas in terms of the Group Areas Act, etc. So that is where I grew up in Phoenix. I had completed my primary and my high schooling in government schools in Phoenix. And I think that, coming up or growing up in that area where we had limited resources, where we didn't have the best of everything in life. But the kids of that era and of that area always strived, for better. And I think that is what had pushed me and forced me to want to become somebody, coming up in that area and having a skill or having the potential to do more is what laid the foundation for me to study, to become a CA. But I think before I go further into that, when I completed my schooling, I was at a crossroads between actually pursuing a tertiary qualification or going out and working, because coming from limited resources and not having the ability to have the funding to be able to go into a tertiary institution. So I was faced with that challenge. And I think fate wouldn't have it any other way. And the belief that my parents had in me, I pursued tertiary qualification. And actually, you'd be surprised, but my first choice wasn't to become a chartered accountant. It was actually to study medicine. But there again, I think fate wouldn't have it any other way. And instead of having fun at medical school with the cadavers, I was having fun with IFRS and tax and managerial accounting and finance at a University of KwaZulu-Natal. So that is where I studied my BCom. And it was through bursaries, through student loans, through the NASFAS scheme that gave me the opportunity to be able to complete my degree, my BCom degree, and my honors in accounting, and completing it in the 4-year required time. But because obviously there was not that to have that option of failing, so worked hard, buried my head in my books, studied, worked part-time to fund my studies, and also tutored at University of KwaZulu-Natal to the first year and second year BCom students, because I firmly believe that knowledge should be shared, you know and as you learn, you should be able to share that knowledge and help somebody else to grow from it. So yeah, so that was my tertiary qualification. And while at varsity, I got signed on by Deloitte, to do my articles in Johannesburg. So that was a huge jump for me, because coming from a little town in KZN where, I didn't even know how to take public transport to varsity. And then all of a sudden, I'm given an opportunity to leave Durban and to move to Johannesburg to do articles at a prestigious audit firm like Deloitte. So after my tertiary qualification, went on to Deloitte in Johannesburg, did my articles. It was a wonderful experience. Well, actually, the first time I learned to drive on a public road was in Johannesburg, because straight out of varsity, I got my license, and then it was to Johannesburg. So there was lots of firsts and lots of challenges, but I guess what kept me going is that end, that goal and that vision, and to want to be someone and to do better and to be better, you know. So articles was a good experience. I had learned a lot and traveled a lot in Johannesburg. Um, and I had some good clients. Some of my key clients was the likes of Anglo Platinum, Sappi, Stakinico, Jonic Entertainment. So it was a wonderful experience. And I think what made it even better was the JIT experience that Deloitte offers to CAs. Is when you're done with your articles, you have a program, the JIT program, where you go across to America. So I had the experience of going and working in Chicago on a 3-month secondment. And one of my clients there was a property group specializing in real estate, general growth properties. And I think that is where my passion for the property industry had come about. Um, and so after that experience, I was back in South Africa, returned home. And yeah, I worked primarily in Johannesburg. But being a Durban born girl, I had decided to move back to KZN, to Durban. Yeah, and that's when I joined my current employer, the Newland Group, who specialize in commercial and industrial real estate. So coming up the ranks there, I had started off as group financial manager, um, a very entrepreneurial business. Um, it was coming from corporate Johannesburg to an entrepreneurial environment was a vast difference, and a very big learning curve, I must say. But what made me become somebody that's well, CAs are disciplined, but also agile, because in an entrepreneurial environment, you decisions are made very fast. You've got to be able to think quickly, think on your feet, and yeah, moving back from Johannesburg, um, starting at this company, and learning, to learning from
Okay.
bottom up,
Okay.
creating the
Makes
system,
sense.
learning from bottom, and working my way up the ranks from Group FM to head of finance and treasury, and then to CFO. So it's a dynamic team, dynamic environment, and I think it resonated with me, the culture of the company, where it's an ultimate solutionist approach. Um, Accept a challenge, find a way around it, and never giving up. So it resonated very well with me. And I suppose that's what made me endure and stay with the group
I
for
want to ask you
14
a little bit
years.
about that because I know 14 years is a long time. Entrepreneurial
Yes,
organizations, things move fast, things change fast. And what also ends up happening is people tend to change fast. Most people stay long in corporate.
correct.
And 14 years in one
Yes,
organization is not something you see a lot these days. Maybe let's call it 15, 20 years ago. A lot of people used to do that. These days, people are quick to leave.
correct.
So tell us what gave you that staying
Yeah.
power? Because I mean, you get some people who they settle. It's like, okay, I'm at this position, but you didn't settle, because you continue to grow. So you went. So
Yeah.
there was growth
Yes.
opportunities. You managed to stay. So to talk, give us some advice
Yes.
there.
So I think what made me stay is, like I said, I was able to the go-getter that I am, and I love a challenge, and I like to finding solutions and learning new things, an inquiring, curious mindset, and the culture of the organization is they in like I said, in property, in real estate, commercial industrial property, they are solution finders, and they create game-changing infrastructure for the logistics industry. So it's about finding solutions. It's about creating operationally efficient solutions for companies. And it's that's what attracted me to that environment. And also, although coming from Deloitte and working a bit in a corporate environment thereafter in Johannesburg, it's where I was able to really cut my teeth in in the entrepreneurial environment, because you either sink or you swim, and but it's that passion and that drive to want to learn, to want to grow, to want to find solutions. And I think also for young and upcoming finance professionals and the youth of today, it's become an environment of where we want quick fixes and we want to do things quickly and quick turnarounds and quick achievements and that type of thing. But when you start from bottom up and when you learn the mechanics and dynamics of the organization, and you yourself grow from strength to strength with that organization, that's when you learn your limitations or no limitations. Because when you partner with people who have that same ability to think like you, to endure and to not want to give up, and coming from a previously disadvantaged race group, I think I did mention previously to you as well, is that um, coming from a previously disadvantaged race group, we were not allowed to participate in property, in infrastructure, um, uh, call it 30 years ago. And the magnitude of what we've been able to achieve with this group that we have created with the vision of the CEO and the strategy of the CEO and the dynamic team, we've created together with the professional team involved, a 630,000 square meter port logistics facility in Durban, which is the largest in
Wow.
Southern Africa. And it was inaugurated by the president, Cyril Ramaphosa
I want to
himself.
talk to you about that property thing just a
So
little bit
it's,
while you're there. So,
yes,
you join this organization which doesn't just do property. Then there might be some young CAs or young accountants or professionals who are thinking of joining a property company. And you spent some time in property
yes.
specifically. What learnings did you obtain from there that you don't learn in general finance roles?
Well, property, it's a very dynamic industry, you know, and you learn the value of that property actually holds, and property is not in the, it's like I said, it's not, it's for the long haul. You see the value of an investment long term. You have to see the value of the investment grow out, and you understand, you learn valuation techniques, you understand what returns you're getting on the money that you put in. You learn how the value of property grows exponentially. So that's what make that is what would make property different from other industries. And if you think about it, property is needed. You need a property to have an office in. You need a property to run a manufacturing company in. You need a property to have uh, schools in, universities in. So property is all encompassing, and you learn the value of growth, of exponential growth. Um, you learn various valuation techniques. You understand leases. You understand the value of leases. In property, you understand how to actually leverage a property and long-term leases to actually recycle and to grow and to um, generate wealth from starting from one investment and growing on to multiple property
Mm, mm,
investments. So, and that is how properties have that
yes.
multiplier effect. It's you learn to, like I said, you learn to leverage it. You learn the value of a
Yes.
lease agreement, and you learn the value of turning that document, which is a piece of paper, into a building, into bricks and mortar, which
Yeah, I
exponentially
hear you.
grows
And what I also found
year
quite
on year.
interesting when joining the property industry is that there's this whole new language that they talk about, and they just assume that you know.
Mhm.
But whoever's thinking about joining the property industry,
Yes,
don't worry. Like in your first month or two, you'll figure out all the language. They talk about GLAs and they talk about escalations and they talk about the rental reversions and
yes,
all these
yes,
things. But you will figure it out.
yeah,
If you're sitting out there and you're worried, should I join the property industry? Don't worry. It comes with its own set of language and own set of terms, but you'll figure it out very quickly.
it does. It does. You figure out very quickly, and then after that, it becomes second nature to you.
It's so true. For the audience, we'll be responding to
Absolutely.
questions towards the end. So please add your questions to the comment section now so that we don't miss them. So, Shenika, you told us obviously you moved from Durban to Joburg for the first time before. I mean, yeah, that was your first experience of the world of work, like in corporate. You've worked in
Mhm,
Joburg, you've worked in Durban.
mhm.
For you, what is the main difference between the two? And I'll tell you why I'm asking it because some people say there aren't that many opportunities in Durban, but your career seems to debunk that statement. So I want you to talk a little bit about that, please.
Mhm. Yeah. So, yeah, obviously, when we think about, if you look at Johannesburg, um, it's far larger geographically. Your head offices are there, your large corporates are there. But I think, like I said earlier on in our chat as well, is that doing my articles at Deloitte, and then working for a corporate in Johannesburg for a short while. Um, but where I was able to really cut my teeth and learn business and learn the basics of business and learn the commercial aspects of investments and property was in an entrepreneurial environment based in KZN, and coming from Deloitte as well and doing articles at Deloitte, it's what I found is that you're running audits, you're doing audits, but you're not getting to do, for example, a tax return, and because you work on massive clients, so you have teams that's responsible only for the tax aspect. You have teams responsible only for the audit aspect. Whereas when you are in this environment that I have been working in, it's you. I've learned so much that I didn't learn actually at a corporate. You know, um, doing taxes and tax returns and e-filing them, and understanding SIPC and understanding the nitty-gritties of VAT. So you don't get that high level exposure at what I found at your larger, your big four, So I think in a smaller environment and in smaller economies, so between Joburg and Durban, you get that all-round experience. And by getting an all-round experience, you eventually are able to see and have a perspective of a business from holistically, you know, from the top right down to the bottom, from board level, exco level, right down to your ground level, operational level. So that is what sort of I found made a difference between a Johannesburg entity versus a Durban KZN entity. Um, but also, it's not everybody's cup of tea. Um, you would, some people or a lot of my colleagues when they went up to articles in Johannesburg, they stayed there. They grew into corporates there and stayed there. So people would have different opinions. But I think for me, I wouldn't have changed this experience that I had, because it really gives you that in-depth understanding, and to get a bigger picture, understanding. And also, when you find that you're making decisions at a higher level, and if you can't come up with a solution, or if you find that you're not getting around to what you're trying to achieve or what you're trying to present, but having an understanding from the bottom, having an understanding of the mechanics and dynamics at the bottom grassroots levels, that's what sort of opens your eyes and your mind to then coming up with a solution. So I think that's what would make the
Okay.
difference between
This
Joburg
this
and
is a young
Pretoria.
lady or a young man from Durban now who's just finishing their honors in accounting or CTA, and they're going to move to Joburg soon. They've signed with whatever big four firm. What's the do you have two or
Mhm.
three tips for them to help them to acclimatize easier or to get there easier? What's the thing that was probably the thing that affected you the most that you'd want to pass on to them?
Oh goodness, I think for me it was so many big hoops that I had to jump through. It was Joburg, and learning how to drive, and navigating in a time where we didn't have Google Maps, and getting lost in Johannesburg,
Printing the
and
maps and highlighting them.
learning to printing the maps and writing them down and going on calls, and so it was such a different time 20 years ago, but we made it. We made it. We had to do what we had to do, and I think now it's an easier time. So if I had to give an advice to a young professional starting out with articles, it would be, make the most of your environment. Appreciate that if you had to look at, and go and look, I'm talking from experience, but speak to other CAs who've done the articles 20, 25, 30 years ago. It was a very different time. There was much more challenges that we had to navigate through, but we made it, and now it's about, I think what I would say is, understand your client. With all the research tools that's out there, we didn't have Google and things back then. um, you've got all the research tools at your fingertips. Understand your client. um, Give a value add information to your audit senior, to your audit manager, and always try to stand out and show that, never be afraid to speak, and show that you are able to add some value, because as a first year article clerk, you're intimidated, and you feel like, there's not much value you can add, and that is how I felt, at the beginning, somewhat of an introvert, and you're scared, so, but I would say is, do your research, show that you can add value, and be very, when you go out to audits, speak to the clients, speak to as much of the client staff and personnel, that you can speak to understand the business. And I find that that's where you'd get an understanding of the business as a whole, is you speak to the excuse me, you speak to the employees that are at your lower level, middle management level. That's when they would give you clues to help you in your audits. So that would be it. One of the advices, using your research tools, and try to get a broad overview exposure. So you may be given a certain aspect of the audit, or certain section of the audit to that's your responsibility, but I would say, try and get involved in other aspects, learn. Always have that mindset of learning. You know, you might not be given that section to audit, but learn something else. Taxes, learn taxes, understand taxes. What I found in my environment is that being able to plan and structure taxes make a huge impact to the way you structure funding, the way you structure deals, and also challenging SARS, because I'm quite comfortable at a point now where I'm able to challenge SARS on audits, and I think it's very beneficial as a CA is to understand and know your taxes and read tax articles, because that also helps you to be able to structure
Okay.
transactions.
No, that makes sense. I love getting to learn. My favorite thing is try and understand how the business makes money. It's scary how many accountants don't actually know how
Yes,
the business that they're auditing actually makes money. So
correct.
that's my small tip.
Yes, absolutely.
Coming towards the
Yeah,
end, so I
absolutely.
want to talk to you about audit quickly. You spent 6 years in audit. Now, most
Mhm.
people will say that's quite a long time for somebody who didn't end up there in the long run. Most people, they do their 3 year articles and they're like, oh, okay, they'll be a manager for 2 years max and they leave. But you stayed a little bit longer. Why
Yes,
did you stay a little bit longer if
yes.
audit wasn't your final choice?
I would say I was still testing it a bit to see whether my passion would lie in audit and whether I would go on to become, to stay on within the profession. And I think it was at a point where I was still sort of trying to find my feet between should I stay in audit or should I go into the corporate entrepreneurial environment. I was not one of those CAs who felt like, okay, I hate articles. Once I'm done with articles, that's it. I'm going into corporate. I still had a flair for auditing. I was enjoying it because you get to experience different clients, and you have a lot of respect being an auditor, and so I enjoyed it for what it was. But I think after that, so just before that 6 years was up, I got an opportunity, a good opportunity, to work for a corporate that was offered to me. It was actually it was a prospective client of the audit firm that I got offered the opportunity, and that's what made me then consider, okay, let me try corporate. But I think, I guess, why I stuck around was because it was not something that I hated. Uh, Somebody who has a very disciplined and organized approach and mindset, I think auditing would have suited me also very well. You got to have that discipline, and sometimes for the mundane tasks. Um, so I think it was just, yeah, it just came to me at that point that I decided to jump ship and
For
try
those of you
corporate.
who don't
Mhm.
know, those of us back then coming out of articles, which was still the financial crisis, so there just wasn't that many opportunities at the time.
Yeah,
Shanika,
yeah,
any last few
absolutely.
words from you, or anything we didn't discuss that you'd like the audience to know?
um, I think we pretty much covered a lot of it. I think it's just for upcoming professionals and CAs, it's to have faith in our country, to be invested in SA Inc. I know a lot of people share a different view. A lot of CAs have left the country. A lot of our talent have left the country. But, and like I was telling you earlier on, UAs, it would be so great if CAs could make up parliament, then we would see our country really, smiling. But yeah, have faith in the country. And I think the property sector or the property industry, together with public-private partnerships, I future where and that's where we headed to, is that government is going to need the private sector to be able to unlock uh, capital, to be able to grow the economy, to be able to create operational efficiencies in bottlenecks in the economy. And I see the property sector playing a key role, property and infrastructure sector playing a key role in that. And yeah, that would be my parting view, is that have faith, and each of us try and do our best to make SA Inc. A country that our CAs or fellow CAs that have left want to come back into.
I think that's a
Absolutely.
great way to end. Government needs business, and business needs government. I think that's a good
Absolutely.
way
It's a
for the show to
win-win.
end. It's a win-win. The show has
Yeah.
been live on YouTube and should be available on podcast by tomorrow. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on the podcast and you feel that it's added value, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on that notification bell to get automatically notified when the next episode comes out. Shenika, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you, Uwais. Thank you for